Hello, welcome back to the Cigar Thoughts podcast. Jacson Bevens from fieldgoals.com. With me is Matt Nichols. He's a former offensive lineman for Pacific Lutheran University, won a national championship with them. He was all conference. Really happy to have him and his insight on board with us today. And then we have Danny Kelly, who, if you're watching this, you're familiar with as one of the great voices in Seahawks media right now. Fellas, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
A little bit different show this week, I think. Nice to talk about what went right as opposed to can they fix what's going on. Yeah. One of the things that stood out to me about the game against the 49ers on Thursday, and granted we've had almost a week now to kind of process it, it looked like the type of game that they won on the back half of last year. That they won in the back half of 2013, that they won in the back half of 2012, where, we've seen a lot, with the exception of 2013, we've seen a lot of turmoil in kind of the first halves of the season as they figure out what's going on, what is fixable, what isn't, what do we need to, what unfixable things do we need to adapt to, and then it's just body bag city for the rest of the way. This looked like that. I don't know that they're at that same level yet, or if they'll get to it this year, but 142 total yards allowed.
Isn't that the lowest the Niners have had against the Seahawks ever?
I think
or at least in the Pete Carroll era.
Yeah.
In the last years for the Niners franchise.
Right, in the last two games now.
Think about that, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and what was it? The game before that was like 154 yards. So it's like under 300 yards in two full games of playing against the Seahawks.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So what is it, Danny, and I'll start with you. What stood out most to you about that game?
Well, I mean, just like you said, and I talked about this on our, post-game little wrap-up, was just people will complain, obviously, oh, it should have been a blowout, blah, blah, blah. Like, one, it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Three
there
score
was
games.
never any doubt.
Right.
I mean, like, people are, like, having the fear that the fourth quarter thing is going to happen again. That was snuffed out after, like, one or two drives. It was like, no. Mm-hmm. And the Seahawks, like, ran, like, a 6.5-minute drive, right in the middle of the quarter to, like, pretty much snuff out any life that the Niners had. So, for me, it was, like, basically a feeling of, like, this is Seahawks football. This is exactly what Pete Carroll wants. Mm-hmm. There's that famous video where Marshawn Lynch is like talking to Pete Carroll, like, hey, can we score more points?
Right.
Like, no joke, like Pete Carroll can give a fuck about scoring more points if they have like a 5-point lead. And obviously sometimes that rears its ugly head when they lose like a small lead, but the way he plays minimizes the chance for mistakes so much. He wants to be able to control chaos. We've talked about this. And the best way to do that is to go, conservative, which people hate, but if you look at the Seahawks record over the last 3 years, like,
it's funny you mentioned
it works.
Yeah.
You mentioned people being disappointed, and Matt, I want to get your thoughts on this in a second, but there's a comment in my last article that says, I'm not going to feel good about this team until they reel off 5 or 6 consecutive blowouts.
Awesome.
When was the last time Matt
and that guy probably or girl doesn't probably feel good about their life because they're not a CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Sure, right.
And had 3 ex-wives that all look like Cindy Crawford, and he'll probably just never be satisfied with anything. So whatever.
Right.
I mean, that's not reality in football.
Sure.
Period.
And my takeaway from that was, man, how cool is this? that is an actual complaint that's making it to print on our website.
A win is no longer
this team, this team won't be back until they reel off a month and a half of blowouts. And that is, it's a silly comment and we can laugh at it and I'm obviously bringing it up for public ridicule, but we are talking about a team capable of producing reactions like that, where this is the second straight time that we've seen a 3+ possession win, and this feeling of, okay, but they should have been more. Mm-hmm. What did you see?
Well, I think part of that comes from people's mind still goes back to that Denver Super Bowl, and there were no other playoff games like that year that were blowouts. I mean, that's not how Seattle typically plays football games. Right. And blows opponents out. but that was on the biggest stage at the biggest moment. It was the absolute best game Seattle could have played against that very good Denver offense. And so people have that unrealistic expectation and thought in their mind that they carry over into every single game. So I think that's one of the issues. What I saw watching that game was it was not close at all, period. That game was over in the first quarter. I loved that they came out and it was Marshawn, Lockett, Marshawn. Incomplete pass, Marshawn touchdown.
9 carries on the opening drive.
Exactly. And if you looked at his yards per carry, they didn't end up being great on that first drive. But you watch it, first 2 carries, 22 yards or whatever he has, and he is exploding through the hole. Anybody that says Marshawn has lost a step, put on that first drive, and Beast looked better than he's ever had, or as good as he's ever had.
That was encouraging.
It was absolutely encouraging. Again, we've brought it up. I bring it up. I love the guys that do weird stuff on a football field that nobody else pays attention to. Ricardo Lockett being one of those, and his special teams, and Will Tufuaku is absolutely one of those guys that this team has to have on their roster playing, because he is so valuable. And he came out in the fullback position and absolutely laid wood to the 49ers defense. And it was great to see. Those were kind of tone setters where it wasn't jab. It was right cross, left cross, uppercut, we're coming after you type stuff. And it was fun to see them get back to that. All of that I formation running stuff helped set up some of their play action stuff, which led to long touchdown throws, led to lots of different receptions. Jimmy Graham down the middle as Russell's able to just dip down with a quick fake. So all of that was set up off of that power running game again. And I think probably with a shorter week, they weren't able to game plan as much and get as creative and do stuff like that, where they really had to get back to the basics. And probably after blowing a couple of games in which they really should have won, it was like, who are we? What are we going to do? What's our identity? Come to Jesus moment as a team. And when you're backed up against the wall, you go back to what you naturally do. And Pete Carroll naturally is a power football running coach. Tom Cable naturally, as an offensive line coach, wants to run downhill. And you saw him mix in the read option too, which worked beautifully counter to it. It was a great game.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple weeks ago, I think. Remember, Jacson, you brought it up, like, does this signal a changing to kind of the old style that we saw, which is a more I formation? Last year we talked about this. I think their base run was read option. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but that's how it felt to me. Like, that was their base offensive formation. They're 11 personnel, 3 receivers, tight end, running back, and they line up in shotgun, and they do the read option fake. That's like their base. Now, you got Russell Wilson under center more, which, by the way, is what he did at Wisconsin.
I was going to say,
ridiculously good in that. And I think today in the press conferences, if you heard him, Pete Carroll talked about how Marshawn Lynch actually prefers running out of the I formation. He likes having a little more room. I think he likes being able to build up a little more steam. So he can just completely destroy people. Plus, he's also really good. Like, one of the main attributes about him is his vision. And so, like, finding cutback lanes, finding bounce back lanes. We saw him pick up big. I think there's like a 17-yard gain on that first drive where he basically cut back. This wasn't the lane that he was designed to go through. He cut back. Navarro Bowman and Will Hoyt over pursued, kind of trying to, like, thinking he's going to go through this hole, and then he went straight up. And then, like you said, Will Tufuaku, it's like people get tired of getting hit by a 285-pound fullback. And he's, like, fearless too. Like, he lights people up. Well,
and you get the sense that Marshawn has this. We all know about his relationship with Michael Robinson, right? He referred to him as his eyes. It's the only time now, granted, I don't follow any other team as closely, but I've never heard a running back refer to their fullback as their eyes before. And so if you take that away from him, if you take those eyes away, right? Because Michael Robinson was so good at hitting, not only picking up his guy, but picking up his guy at the right angle to create some space, right? Well, with Tufuaku, you might lose some of that subtlety that you get from Michael Robinson, but he's going to clear some room.
Blunt force trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And Marshawn with momentum, as you mentioned, that's a special thing. Out of read option, what you're left with, and it's a luxury that I almost feel like Seattle got too comfortable with, is there's a lot of times where the running back has to make a guy miss 3 yards deep in the backfield. And it happens with Marshawn all the time. And it's not always the offensive line's fault. Sometimes it's just play design. You're letting someone come free, and you're trusting that running back to miss him. Well, even if you make him miss, now 2 of his first 3 steps are horizontal. Now he's trying to go from 0 to 60 again.
Yeah.
And I feel like from I formation, he can read to Tukuafu and see what his angle is and hit it full speed. And that's when you start to see beast mode. Not just a guy that is turning nothing into a little bit, but a guy who can change a game. And we saw a number of those runs, which I thought was really interesting. I want to get back to you, Danny, in a moment, but philosophically, as a lineman, as an offense in general, what changes when you go from something like read option 11 personnel to I formation, 2 tight ends coming at you?
I think it's kind of that, goes back to that gut pride, mano a mano. Like, I want to physically beat this person up across from me. And when you're running an I formation downhill, it is very powerful. It's very physical. It's a lot of fighting in a little area, basically, because you're trying to get little creases. With that read option, it's more of a stretch play. It's a little bit longer taking. With that I formation, it is just powerful. So I, as a lineman at center, it's harder to do. I always thought, for my personal take, just because you're snapping and trying to move quickly. But as far as a unit, it's kind of one of those, we want to be strong, we want to be tough, and we want to impose our will. And if you do it over and over and over against D linemen, especially D linemen that don't get to rotate out a lot, towards the end of the third and the fourth quarter, you're going to have them physically worn down.
Is your first step different on a read option play as a lineman than it is on a power I running play?
It depends on where your target is. So your steps and where you're heading are different for man versus zone blocking schemes. So again, we're talking about, they run a zone blocking scheme. So if it's an I formation and they're doing a blast, so a 97 blast or something to the left side, if you need to take a wider step, you might be. Whereas if it's just man and you have a nose over you, you're probably taking a step just to his outside shoulder as you're snapping the ball and trying to get your left hand up. So your steps are going to be totally different depending on what schemes.
Right.
Yeah, and target points and aiming points and how many guys are in the box and where you've counted off from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. All of those intricate things.
It's crazy because all linemen are just dumb.
They're dumb morons.
Big meatheads.
Big dumb
Man,
assholes.
asking a lot out of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Tommy boy.
Got it.
I feel like Wingy. But no, it's easier. It's easier when the whole group is going forward and playing physical that way. But again, it's also what is comfortable for the quarterback and the running backs in the group. And I think it's more of who they are, whereas that read option and that spread is more of something they do as a counter to it. That read option part started off as a counter,
right,
and then took over and became what they did a lot of. They still ran it in this game, and if you notice, there's one time. Yeah, they still will. And there was one time where you see it's a third down, and San Francisco's coming with a double blitz off of the right side of Russell Wilson, and it's a read option to Marshawn. He literally pulls it immediately, Russ does, and takes off and runs and gets the first down because he sees the numbers option there with guys blitzing, that running play is stuffed, so he's got to take off. So it'll still be a great changeup to them, but they're more of a power football team.
I have a metaphor, because I like to mix metaphors in terms of, or mix sport metaphors. I played basketball my whole life, so I kind of see the sport in those eyes.
Yeah.
I see the read option as you're a 4 taking a post up on the free throw line, like on one of the corners, versus the I formation type of run is like taking a swing pass on the wing and just like cutting in. Like just like the feel of it, everything is forward like slashing if you're in the I formation, whereas taking like a post up or just like or inlet pass into like one of the corners of the key, you kind of like have to size everything up. You have to like juke one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's not straightforward. It's kind of like, where am I going? What's the best like lane here? And Marshawn Lynch is really good at both of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's really good at the read option. Like obviously they kicked ass the whole year last year. They were the running champions by like 30 yards a game over the second place team. And so the Wilson-Lynch relationship was really important, but it feels like it was a little bit diminished this year in terms of effectiveness. Maybe teams are learning how to defend it a little bit better. Lynch was hurt for the beginning of the year too, and I think they're finding that they like it more. But like, just in terms of style, like I think I formation's like you're running down the wing, getting like on a fast break versus like you're getting posted.
I think the other thing is Russell Wilson has taken a beating this year, and the I formation power run, you don't have to worry about him taking a beating. There's not a chance in which he ends up with the ball in his hands, unless that backside end crashes and he takes it. But it's plays to save Russell, and the fewer times we can have him in the line of fire, the better.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you're talking about from the defender's aspect or viewpoint, because I'm thinking about it, and your eyes, your responsibility, your instinct as a second level defender in a shotgun formation is going to be so much different than when the quarterback's under center, right? Your visibility is different. Your lanes are less easy to see. Splits are often tighter. And so, one of the things we've been talking about, this I formation versus read option in terms of the run game, one of the things that I thought the I formation did so well was create some really clean pockets off of a true play action, not a half-hearted shotgun snap, do this and then drop back and throw. Yeah. That's not fooling very many people very often. But when you're under center and Marshawn Lynch already has 4 carries of 6+ yards on this drive, and you go play action to that is much different if you're a second level, third level defender trying to figure out, is this a run play, is it a pass play, etc. Yeah. And I thought that the result of that was a lot of clean pockets, which we just haven't seen when teams don't have to adjust their defense from read option. From that front 4 isn't doing much different when they're rushing the passer or playing the run if you're in shotgun. They really aren't, right? Like they're not taking different angles, but I formation, you've got a much bigger difference in terms of the angles that they're taking and the decisions they have to make. And one of the payoffs was a really well-run, take advantage of the skills he's got, touchdown to Tyler Lockett. First NFL receiving touchdown. And Danny, I know that play stood out to you. What did you see on that, and is that something that's repeatable moving forward?
Oh yeah, definitely. So that play, I've talked about it a few times on Twitter during games earlier. The Seahawks have been running this it essentially looks like it's going to be a play action bootleg, but instead of bootlegging, he just drops back like an extra 5 yards. He doesn't bootleg out, and so it looks like it's going to be a bootleg, but then he ends up just doing a straight drop. So what happens is, when you see a normal bootleg, say you're running to the right, this is what happened with the Seahawks. They're running to the right. Russell Wilson will do his half pivot, fake the handoff, and then bootleg out to the other side. What happens now is there's a book on Wilson. You have to hold him on the backside. So they have a defensive end on the backside of the play. In this case, it was Aaron Lynch, who just waits for him.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of that this year.
He's a super athletic guy. Yep. And Darrell Bevell actually mentioned this in the presser today. He said teams have been defending our bootleg a lot better. What happens is Russell Wilson will bootleg out. That he'll have to first beat that guy, run around him or juke him. A lot of times he'll just get hit and tackled. And we've there's been calls for quitting the bootleg, just stop bootlegging because it's not working. Yeah. So what they did is they took out the bootleg. They pulled the center. He goes to his right a little bit, then he flares off and took Aaron Lynch, who's kind of just waiting. He's not rushing upfield. He's not going down the line. He's kind of just waiting for Wilson. So that was a great wrinkle, and that gave him a chance to get a really deep drop with no pressure. So Lynch is on the outside. He's taken care of. Everyone else is kind of washed down the line. J.R. Sweezy let one guy kind of get through, but he took care of him enough that it was he kind of carried him past Russell Wilson. And then Wilson could throw a 65-yard pass, true air yards, to Lockett, who ran a great route, got by his guy, and obviously let the speed do the rest. So that was just awesome play. I think that's something they'll be able to use a lot. They'll still be able to, and then they can do real bootlegs off of it too. They can play off of that.
Yeah, I think that what we saw there was something that really lets both Russell Wilson and a guy like Tyler Lockett show out Not just do the things that is asked of every player, but really show what sets them apart, that made them worth high-end draft picks. Russell Wilson, when he can step into a throw, can throw the ball 70 yards accurately. That is still, even in this, day and age where everyone is a freak athlete, that is still a really remarkable skill. And Tyler Lockett, who I think said something in the press this week about, I told him, never underthrow me, right? He trusts his ability to get behind the defender, and that's what you saw. You saw him beat an NFL defender deep, just straight up beat him deep. And when those two things, when Russell Wilson has a chance to really lean into a throw, and when Tyler Lockett has a chance to get up to full speed and do what makes him so explosive, we saw something that was really remarkable. One of the things you started to touch on there, Danny, and I'm really curious to get your thought on this, Matt, is the offensive line play on that particular play call was really unique, especially the center position. Yeah,
so they faked the run to the right, and all of the offensive linemen moved to the right.
And two tight ends.
And two tight ends. So Tufuaku had come out from the fullback position and moved to the right tight end. Luke Wilson was at the left tight end. So you have 7 people going to the right, plus Marshawn. It was a 2-receiver route with Lockett and Lockett, were the only 2 receivers out in the play. And typically those have to be big plays. When you're running a max protect like that, you have to be able to hit it. But Drew Nowak, what he did is he snapped the ball, he takes about 2 steps to the right and then peels off to the backside to go pick up, and it was Aaron Lynch who was on the backside waiting, because that D end has been creeping on Russell's bootlegs out of the backside.
Which is the idea, by the way. That's what they want.
That's exactly what they want. And so
Wilson takes the guy out of the whole play.
Yep. And so Drew Nowak did a perfect job of selling the fake, making sure all of the offensive line is moving to the right, and then peeling back and just being that extra line of defense there from a backside blitz. And it's something I've seen the Seahawks do a couple of times this year. It's not something that's incredibly common. Oftentimes you'll hinge with your backside. But again, being able to run out of the I formation and being able to establish that line of scrimmage with Marshawn allowed them to run this kind of play. Because if they have no run game, safeties can stay back deep. They don't have to rely on or coming up to help stop the run.
So, a question along those lines then is, on a play like that, it's a very unique movement by the center, right? It coincides with a very deep drop from Wilson.
Yep.
Is that something that happens late enough in the play that it's not a key for an over-the-top defender?
Yes, because if a safety is still reading the offensive line at 2 to 3 steps, a receiver will be by him by that point. Yeah. So they're looking, safeties and some of my friends that played safeties and linebackers, they would always check to watch offensive linemen to see if on play action pass, if they just stood up, because you could find a key on somebody and you would know all game long, hey, the right tackle on play action pass pops up like it's a regular pass protection while everybody else looks like a run, and they would know the play was a pass immediately. Those things have to happen quickly. All of this was something that worked so beautiful in unison that no safety would be able to tell and still have enough time.
And the key to this particular play, and why, like you said, this is a shot or nothing.
Yep.
They called this up as like, we're taking a shot down the field, or maybe if not, Russell Wilson will scramble for a yard or 2, whatever. He'll get out of bounds past Lynch or slide when he runs into Lynch. Or like if he keeps, like whatever. So the key here is it's a numbers game thing. There's 7 guys on the line. You're holding Aaron Lynch on the back, so it's 7 offensive linemen against probably 6 defenders because Aaron Lynch is out of it. So that means you have to have another guy kind of up in the box, one of the safeties come up. So it's really one-on-one. There's one guy in the middle, and from there, like, he has to decide between Lockett and Lockett.
Yeah.
And so it's a numbers game.
Yeah, and when they went back and showed the all 22 during the telecast, Phil Simms pointed out, he's like, he could have had his choice of either receiver.
Yeah.
They were both wide open. And all of that comes from being able to establish a running game and having that run fake mean something. Again, if you have no run game, run fakes don't mean crap. But being able to establish that running game early and often allowed them to have a chunk play like that.
And the Niners looked like they were in cover 2 on it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, getting beat on a cover 2, beat deep on cover 2, absolute no.
And that's the thing, though, because they knew, they said, okay, there's 7 dudes on the line. We're going to have one guy obviously taking the backside. They know what they're doing, what their assignments are. So the natural inclination, the human thing is, I don't want to get gouged by Marshawn Lynch here.
Yeah.
And if you lose like if you take 2 steps forward, you're done. Like Lockett and Lockett are gone.
Yeah.
And it's too late at that point.
It would be really interesting to look back at the All-22 and watch to see where the 49ers safeties started at when they run their 2 deep from the first series of the game.
Yeah, I should say it's a 2 deep with man outside.
Yeah.
So it's not really a cover 2.
Yeah, so where they start in depth-wise. So are they at 10 yards, 12 yards, and then start to creep up a yard because the run game became so dominant? That would be something that I think would be really interesting to see, because natural instincts, again, with that running game, is that the safeties are going to have to come up when you play 2 deep safeties. Somebody has to come up to help support the run. Mm-hmm. So that natural instinct is going to be to come forward.
And that's the power of play action, like in a nutshell.
Is what we saw on Thursday sustainable moving forward?
Like for the Seahawks as a team?
For the Seahawks as a team.
Yeah, I mean, I've always if the question is, did they get it back or whatever? Like, are they the team that we thought they'd be before the year? I think they're getting closer. Like, they're
questions
going
whatever you want it to be, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's sustainable. Like, the history's shown, like, this is a really, really good team, really talented team. It almost felt like outliers, like the things that they've done so far this year. Like the whole turnover differential thing, like
super
weird statistical outliers.
Yeah. They're now 3-1 when they don't win the turnover battle, and 0-3 when they do.
And Pete Carroll's like, my mind doesn't know what to do with that. I've got 35 years of coaching experience, and this is the weirdest shit that's ever
There's going to have to be a regression to the mean at some point, and all the things that normally happen will start to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and I talked about how Pete Carroll, he's very, like, people talk about him being like rah-rah, like, almost just like a dork.
That sells him so short.
But he studies statistical trends so closely. He's all about minimizing variance in the different areas, because like we've talked about like 10 times now, it's like football is chaos. It's just total chaos. And so his whole thing, and I think why he's had such sustained, consistent success over the last like decade plus, is because he's figured out like his formula. Like he says, the all-time greatest way to win is the way that the Seahawks have been doing it. And so they're sticking to that formula, and I think the outliers are going to like work themselves out, hopefully. Obviously things happen, and maybe there's a talent deficit, there's a depth deficit now as compared to the last couple of years, but as you lose guys in free agency, you have to replace them with cheap rookie deals. And Michael Bennett talked about that, like, we don't have quite as many veterans anymore, so it's a different dynamic. But I don't know. I think going forward, they appear to have turned the corner, and so this year could definitely be like their Kansas City game from last year, I think.
So, with that in mind, we've got some very encouraging trends on the offensive side. Maybe a way to protect the offensive line and their deficiencies with this change in philosophy. Maybe it's a getting back to the roots. What we saw from the defense was very, very good. Like we mentioned, 142 yards. The 49ers had more punts than first downs. I mean, these are really unusual stats that came out of the game.
They hadn't done that in like 10 years, I think.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, Dan, I want to start with you. How much of what we saw from the defense, and larger question, team as a whole, is the result of Seattle getting back to what's made them great the last 3 years? How much of it is just a reflection of playing a really bad team on a short week?
I was thinking about this today, doesn't it kind of suck that beating the 49ers, like, there's this giant caveat to it? Like,
yeah.
That is really foreign to me.
Almost bugs me as much as the fact that you don't say caveat.
Caveat?
I don't know. I actually don't know what's right.
Okay, so I'll go with caveat.
No, I like caveat better now that I hear it.
But the point is, like, over the last couple of years, this would have been like a signature win, right? Like, you beat the 49ers at their place. Yeah. And now it's like, oh, the 49ers suck. but I think it's somewhere in the middle, honestly. I said this before the game. I don't think the 49ers are the worst team in the NFL. I think they are pretty dysfunctional right now, and they're having major issues with their line and with their quarterback. And I mean, obviously they're not a good team, but I still think beating a team that's a rival on the road on a Thursday night game, little preparation, and you didn't just beat them, you strangled them in the first quarter, and they didn't have any life in the second half. I think in the second half the Niners had 6 punts and a field goal. It's not like it was ever close.
Right.
So I mean, to me, what they finished with 81 net yards passing after you account for sacks.
Yeah,
that's crazy. And Kaepernick didn't have a single rushing yard.
Yep, for the first time in his career.
I did not know that was for the first time.
That's the first time in his career, and they had. I saw this stat. They had 3 yards net in the fourth quarter.
So think about this.
3.
Colin Kaepernick, a guy who is responsible for a 500-yard game from scrimmage in the playoffs, who, as a second-year player, went for 400 yards in the Super Bowl from line of scrimmage, accounting for 81.
Well, he had 300 yards passing the week before.
Yeah.
Against the Ravens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he's been horrible all year long. He's had incredible swings of being very good, being okay, being bad.
Look at what the Ravens did to the Cardinals in their place, too. It's not. I mean, to me, the Ravens aren't as bad as the record.
No.
Again,
they've been outscored by 25 points this year.
Yeah, they've had the lead or had the chance to take the lead in the final 2 minutes of every single game.
Yeah,
we talked about that razor's edge difference between the Hawks being undefeated or being 2-6. It's the same way for the Ravens.
Someone was asking me on Twitter, am I supposed to feel good about putting up 20 points on the 49ers? So and so, I can't even remember who put the Cardinals. The Cardinals put 40-something points on them. Should I feel concerned about the Seahawks? I said, well, the Packers put 17 up on the 49ers. Should you be concerned about the Packers?
Yeah.
I mean,
you don't get the same team every week.
And you can't play those. You can't. Fans do that, but you can't.
It's all about, and Matt, we see exactly eye on this. It's people are completely irrational about what they expect.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, not everybody.
I think you guys are perfectly rational. Keep it up.
but general, the I guess whatever you call it, the narrative or the general fan is it should have been a blowout, blah blah blah. It's that's not how it works. This is the NFL.
You in your lifetime, you only get so many 17-point wins with your favorite team.
On the road, in the division, on a short week.
Right. So one of the main stifling factors, arguably, actually probably most obviously the main stifling factor with Seahawks defense was the pass rush. We have seen the pass rush be exceptional, be elite in terms of pressuring the quarterback. Their pressure percentage is top 3 in the NFL. Very few sacks. Mm-hmm. They got home this week. Is that, it's kind of that difference between, putting a good swing on the ball being a hard ground out or being a double to the gap, right? It's, fundamentally you're doing the exact same thing. Yeah. But it's that little difference between them. What do you think, Matt, when you saw that game? Michael Bennett, 3.5 sacks, now takes over the NFL lead in sacks. Cliff Averill, 1.5 sacks. Mm-hmm. 6 is a team for the Seahawks. Was that something where they have progressed from just getting the quarterback off his spot to getting home? Or is it more a Colin Kaepernick lack of pocket awareness, ability to get out of it that led to it? What did we see on Thursday?
It's a both. It's not an either or. It's a both.
You can answer that with every single question anyone ever asked. I found that in football.
Yeah.
Everyone wants black and white.
Yes, and it's not.
There's nuance.
No, there is. I mean, if you follow Richard Sherman followed Torrey Smith around the whole game, so they took away their best receiver. Anquan Bolden is slow. Vernon Davis looks like a shell of himself. When Vernon Davis caught one of the passes, he was looking around to see who was there to hit him, and then realized, there's nobody here. I can get a couple of yards. But it was in the slowest motion you've ever seen. But that D line was coming off the ball so fast, they were getting to the top of Colin Kaepernick's drop before he was getting there, it felt like. Mm-hmm. The pressure was relentless. Seattle was able to stay in their base defense for the game.
Yeah, they really didn't blitz much.
They didn't blitz much at all. They just stayed with their 43, cover 1, cover 3, do whatever they do. They didn't have to get exotic. And again, on a short week, you don't have time to do a lot of those things and to have practice doing them. So it was really good to see just how explosive they got off of the ball. The difference between pressures and sacks, again, is that razor's edge, that little bit difference. 6 sacks is incredible. Is that something we should expect? Absolutely not. But this team has been getting pressure on the quarterback for 2.5 years. That's something that hasn't changed.
I will say the sack thing, it's not just the Niners. Obviously, I saw someone talking about how the Niners two guys, right guard, right tackle, whose names escape me because they're nobodies pretty much. They gave up 5 out of 6 sacks. They're terrible. You know, the Seahawks took advantage of that, and that's great. Good job.
But you have to do that.
You have to do that.
There's so few teams that you'll play that don't have the weak link. Like, you can make a case for a couple of teams in the NFL each year that don't have an obviously exploitable matchup. Part of winning in the NFL is the ability to exploit a mismatch, right? It's not just being better all the way across the board. If you can find one area that you can just keep hammering on,
good coaching.
Right.
It's going after Thurl Simon. It's going after Thurl Simon in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's exactly what Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady and Bill Belichick did.
They identified.
They went to the weak link and made Seattle change their defense by bringing Simon outside, bringing Maxwell inside.
He's dropping his right arm.
For
the hand.
Yeah, who would have, at the risk of a self-destructive tangent, who would have thought that an interception on the opening drive would be the worst thing to happen to Seattle in the Super Bowl last year?
We still don't have him back.
Jeremy Lane getting hurt. But I do want to get to that in a second.
Because I want to say, my point was, it's not just this game. They took advantage of those things, but going back to the Panthers, they had 3 sacks on the Panthers. Panthers actually, their O-line had been much maligned over the offseason, but they protected Newton really well this year. And then going back another game, they sacked the Bengals 4 times. Bengals hadn't given up a sack to that point in the year. So it's not just one game.
Yeah.
They've done a really good job over 3 games.
And they're not having to sell the house to get pressure on the quarterback, which is a good thing. They can stay back in their coverages and get pressure with 4, sometimes 5. They don't have to bring 6 or 7.
We talked a lot about the offensive line tonight, in both Seattle's and San Francisco's. But the team that they're going to be playing this Sunday has an offensive line that is lauded as great, maybe the best in the NFL. What do you see, Matt, this week coming up, when you look at the Seahawks coming off their game, 10 days rest, etc., and the Cowboys getting Dez back, but no Romo? What are your thoughts going in?
I'm going to be interested to see if we start off just playing our normal base defense. Richard Sherman at his typical side of the field, Carey at his side, playing Cam down in the box, just doing what we normally do. Or if we're going to start off right away, and who knows what percentage Dez will be back.
We don't even know for sure if he's going to play.
Exactly.
Right?
He was limited today.
And he had a fracture in his foot. So how much can he actually push off, run? How long will it hold up? All of those things. Are they going to start with Richard on him right away? I'll be interested to see that. The running game is going to be very interesting. We've been very good against the run. We were really good against San Francisco. This line is very good. Dallas can put any of those running backs back there, whether it be McFadden or Kristen or anybody. They're going to be able to run the ball. So what I'm going to be looking for is how fast are we getting off of blocks? Is Ruben and Mebane getting double teamed that are allowing Wagner and KJ to flow to the ball? That's going to be really big. And missed tackles is going to be huge too. If we have a guy wrapped up in the hole for a 1-yard gain, it can't turn into a 4-yard gain. So all of those things is what I'm going to be looking at. I also really hope we get a lot of pressure on Matt Castle whenever he does end up throwing. And if we can force them into those 3rds and 6th and 7s, longer amounts, we're going to be sitting in a really good position. If it's 3rds and 1s and 2s consistently throughout the day, it could be a really frustrating game.
It's interesting. Dez Bryant is going to be one of the major topics of discussion with this matchup going in, and assuming he plays, we're talking about, I think, truly one of the most prototypical wide receivers the NFL's ever seen. I think that this guy is everything and more. I think that matters less against the Seahawks because I think about all of the number one receivers, and there's a lot of great wide receivers in the NFL right now. But when you go through them and you look at how they've performed against the Seahawks, it's not the number one wide receiver that beats them, like ever, really.
Yeah.
And while Dez changes things and maybe may force some scheme switches if they decide that Rich Sherman needs to follow him around or whatever, what'll be interesting to me is, can Dallas win with a secondary option? Because when they beat Seattle in Seattle, they won with secondary options. Terrence Williams had a big game. Jason Witten had a very good game. You know, Dez didn't beat them.
No.
And so it's going to be really, really interesting to see who on that offense now can beat the Seahawks defense. And I'm looking around, and McFadden had a really nice game, ran downhill. We've seen, closer than any fan base, what Kristen Michael can be. But it's still Matt Castle and Darren McFadden and Kristen Michael, and maybe a close to full strength Dez Bryant. Am I crazy in thinking that the Cowboys at home don't score more than 17 in this one?
I think you talked about number one receivers don't typically beat Seattle. Had there not been a holding call in Cincinnati, A.J. Green was well on his way to doing that.
Sure.
And that changed immediately as soon as we put Richard on him. And for the structure of the defense, I don't think it really matters, but it'll be the game within the game. 17 points is probably a good number for that. It's a third string quarterback, somebody who wasn't there through training camp.
I mean, Brandon Weeden was 4 weeks of bad play better than Matt Castle.
Yeah.
It took a month of really bad quarterback play to go to the quarterback that they have now. I can't imagine that quarterback, even at home, even with Dez Bryant, beating the Seahawks.
Well, he threw 3 picks
in a row.
So that'll be interesting
drives.
to see if the Seahawks can get some turnovers going and do their thing. When you say, is it unreasonable for you to think? No, I don't think at all. Because, I mean, last year the Seahawks, averaged 15? They give like 15 and a half.
14 year before that.
So I don't know what they are right now. I think they're still pretty good. Maybe they're at like 20 or something like that.
Oh, they're under that.
I think they're like in the top 5 or 6 in scoring defense right now. But I think that's the game that Pete Carroll, that's what he shoots for. Like, give up 7, 8 points to crappy teams and 16, 17 max to good teams. That's the idea. But obviously things happen, crazy stuff happens on special teams and whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal, and I think that's doable. Obviously, the reason they play the games is because weird stuff happens. But I think Seattle should win this game just because of all the variables right now. Like if Romo and Dez were playing, I think it'd be different. But yeah, I think going down there, they should win.
Yeah.
What's 128 divided by 7? I was just going through the scores.
120.
128 divided by 7, you're looking at 18.3 points per game. So
That's
we're talking about
right
that's, check me on that. Just running through some mental math. But I think it's about 18.3 points per game. That's elite in this day and age. And the Seahawks defensive ranks are still way up there for all the fourth quarter shenanigans and yada, yada, yada. They are 4th against the run in yards per carry. They are middle of the pack in passing yards per attempt, but in terms of passer rating allowed, they're still very good. In terms of points allowed, they're still way up there. They're 6th in DVOA. This is, I think we're gonna see momentum shift. I think that we're going to see gravity start falling in favor of the Seahawks defense. And this is a defense that we saw last year, the year before that, that can get that downward momentum and carry that for literal months at a time.
Yeah.
And if it means feasting on a third string quarterback, so be it. My main interest in this game is going to be, can the offense duplicate the imposing of the will? Can they score? Can they, even if they only give up 17 points or less, can they score enough to win anyway on the road?
Can they neutralize Greg Hardy as well?
Sure.
I think that's going to be a really big thing. We saw Greg Hardy get off to a fast start versus New England, get a couple of sacks on Tom Brady.
He's still super good at playing football.
He is. He's a
for all of the other
being.
things
He's
that
an
he
absolutely
is.
Atrocious human being. It's too bad that his 10-game suspension got reduced to 4. Or that he's even allowed in the league for what he did to that woman.
Well, it's the same as air pressure, adjustments.
Yes, exactly the same.
So.
Exactly. But no, I think being able to control Greg Hardy is going to be key. Russell Okung had a very good pass protecting game last week. Probably his best of the year.
Yeah,
he now has his toughest task year to date to go up against. This is one of the old Alden Smith, Justin Smith type of days where it's going to be a long day. So that's going to be the matchup I'm really focusing on.
Good point.
Do the Cowboys keep Greg Hardy on one side, or are they a team that will move him? If Okung locks him up, will they move him and have him go against Gilliam?
I don't know what they've done, but I know that.
Why do I even have you here?
I know that teams do that, and that's why nowadays, obviously the left tackle is the premium position, and it still is. But right now, right tackles are pretty important as well, because what teams are doing is just lining up their best pass rusher on the right side and going against those guys, exploiting that. So it's both sides are important, and the good news is Gary Gilliam is probably going to be back. He was on a pitch count last week, and when he was out, Alvin Bailey gave up 2 sacks, just terrible. Just let the
ducking his head.
There's a lot of places he'd rather be.
31 other places, including Dallas. Hey, he'll get to be there.
So, obviously Gilliam isn't like a world beater at this point, but it is an upgrade over Alvin Bailey. Assuming he'll be back, they can do what they've been doing at times, is to chip on that side, or to put another tight end, put Tukuafu out there. Things like that. They can't do that every play, but there's ways to mitigate it. If they only have one really good pass rusher, they can kind of scheme around that.
And I think part of it goes back to the power running game, being able to establish that from the get-go.
There was a guy on the Giants last week, and I don't know his name. It's Orleans
Darkwa. Orleans Darkwa.
Trucked Greg Hardy. Google that. He trucked him. He ran him over. So to your point.
I think we're going to have to be able to establish that line of scrimmage going forward. Because in pass situations, he's a beast. And we have slow developing, longer, more explosive plays that we go for with our passing game. And if Russell Okung's out on an island with Greg Hardy, we're going to have Marshawn there to chip, or Jimmy in a wing position to give a shove before he releases out. I think, again, being one of the hard things about playing on Thursday right after a Sunday game is you have no time to prepare, and you really have no practices. You have a bunch of walkthroughs, and let's get on the plane, fly down there, and then play a football game. The good part about coming off of that is everybody gets a long weekend, the body gets refreshed. And I used to absolutely love, towards the end of college season, when we would get like a Sunday and a Monday of just like no physical activity and like a light Tuesday practice. It's amazing how good your legs feel and how fast you're able to bounce back. Well, they've gotten 3 days off. They've been able to fully game plan for Dallas. And this is one of those tipping points or turning points type part of the season where if they go 4-4 into the halfway point and then have one game in the next, or have a bye week and then 3 at home,
I think
they're in a really good spot.
This is the only game they play in a 23-day stretch.
After playing 4 and 18.
That is,
That's insane.
Like that's crazy. And this is the thing, when you look at the Seahawks 3-4 record, I'm not saying they're not a 3-4 team. Look, to win NFL football games, you have to make the right play at the right time. That's just what it is. And they haven't done that more often than not. But when you look at a 3-4 Seahawks team, make sure you're keeping in mind the fact that they have had a brutal schedule so far. They've already had 3 short weeks this year. Like, that's really tough what they're going to. But they made it through without sinking their season. It's still very viable. And what they have coming up is an okay team that doesn't have a quarterback, followed by a bye week, followed by 3 straight home games.
Yeah.
Cardinals, Steelers, 49ers. There is a very legitimate shot. This team is 7-4 a month from now, and within a game or tied for first in the NFC West. Even at 3-4, even at 2-4, with all of the historical odds stacked against a team like that, this is a team that has consistently, in the Pete Carroll era, been significantly better in the second half than they have been in the first half of the season. Is there any indication to either of you guys, and I'll let either of you take this, that anything is different this year, or are you expecting a second half surge like we've seen each of the last 3 seasons?
I expect that second half surge based on health. This is a healthy team.
Right.
That is
Richardson
huge.
coming back, Lane's not far away.
Yeah, health is an unbelievable important thing, and I don't think it gets talked about enough. Typically, the teams that are the healthiest are the ones that are playing the best at the end of the year because rosters are so thin, and you have to have those guys that are on your roster because they make league minimum and they're rookies and first, second year players. But to be able to have guys on your roster that are playing in the appropriate spot, the Brock Coyles playing on special teams and not starting at middle linebackers, the Kevin Pierre-Lewis's on special teams or select defensive plays, not every defensive plays, that makes a huge difference. This team has stayed healthy for the most part. There's been nothing significant truly year to date. We haven't lost a starting left tackle, a starting quarterback.
Seahawks have been really fortunate.
We've been and over the last few years we have been as well. That is going to be one of the biggest factors going forward. That's one of the things that gives you hope about the second half of this year is they're healthy at this point. They're healthy halfway in.
And going off of that, it sounds like Paul Richardson's going to be back this week. Jeremy Lane, they're holding off till after the bye, as I understand.
Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah.
Okay. So I truly think, and I don't think Jeremy Lane is an all-pro corner, but I think that the difference between him and the people they've been throwing out in that safety or in that kind of 5th DB position, trying to convert linebackers into cover guys, trying to convert safeties into cover guys. I honestly think that the health of Jeremy Lane is one of the most important linchpins of success for the Seahawks because he can cover guys on the slot. We've seen it. He's scrappy as hell. I think that he is a huge get for them when he comes back, and a very obvious, even as a fan, detached, looking at it, you can see very obvious improvement. Paul Richardson, on the other hand, is a first-round draft pick from last year.
Second round
Draft. Sorry, first pick for the Seahawks.
Pick.
Yes, thank you. Who came along well towards the end of last year. It was starting to look like a guy worthy of 50-plus snaps a game.
He was 3rd in the team in receiving.
Crazy.
Yeah. Which
might say as much about the Seahawks passing game as it does about Paul Richardson.
Yeah.
Jeremy Lane, when he steps back on, he's the 5th DB the second he's healthy, right? Yep. With Paul Richardson, he doesn't play special teams. Where does he fit in? Danny, I want to lead on you on this. Where do you slot Paul Richardson in moving forward?
That's a really good question. I think
that's why I asked it.
I mean, I just picture him going in. He seems to me more like an outside guy, honestly, like a Deshaun Jackson light, if you will. A guy that will stretch the field, really threaten. Like, you have to be like aware of him as a safety, right? In the same vein as Lockett, like in terms of the guy can just beat people with speed. And then what Pete Carroll was talking about today was that he's really, really good route runner in terms of he's really quick into his breaks, really quick into his breaks. So I see him as like, throw him in there instead of Ricardo Lockett, or throw him in there instead of Chris Matthews on a few plays, things like that. I don't know if he's necessarily going to come in and take over like Curse's snaps or anything like that.
I was going to say, is there of those top 3 receivers, Baldwin, Curse, Lockett, is he a replacement for any of them this year?
I mean, I would lean towards no.
He's more of a rotational guy.
Right. I think he just he steps in right below that, I think, and then like makes the depth look that much better. And so I think they'll use him in certain packages. They'll use his talent, like you were talking about earlier with Lockie. They'll use his talents in certain packages because you can only practice I don't know how many you would do, but you have 30 plays set up for a game. To keep it in your mind, you're not taking 150 plays into a game and whatever. Get a few plays in mind with him to we think we could use his skill set for this and run that 3 times in a game or whatever. So I think that's how they approach a lot of these guys. That's the same with Chris Matthews. Right now, Chris Matthews is more of a blocking receiver. He's in on the heavy sets. He goes in, he motions in. He's essentially a tight end on a lot of plays. So they'll find ways to get him in, and I think the way he played last year was, underrated. I think he was actually really coming on as he Wilson and him had a good rapport. There was a few plays where he was going over the middle, getting slant plays. He did that one over Janoris Jenkins where he was running down the sideline, things like that. They just got to figure out ways to get him involved.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. I think the Seahawks team that we're going to see from here on out is going to be significantly different, not only from a personnel standpoint with getting guys back healthy, but as a cohesive unit. We've seen in each of the last few years this sort of turning point for the team where all of a sudden they lock in and play like the best team in the NFL. Now, this year I think the elite class of the NFL is better than it's been in a long time. I think that there's a lot more true Super Bowl contenders than there has been. But I do anticipate Seattle reestablishing themselves among that class. We can keep going for a long time, and we probably will. But we got to get out of here so that you guys can get back to your lives. I want to say thank you to the Glow Nightclub here in downtown Bellingham for being such gracious hosts. It's really awesome to be here. They take great care of us. Come on down. I know it's Wednesday night. This will post tomorrow morning, but I know it's Wednesday night. But Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, come down to Glow Bellingham. Nice to see some people out here tonight checking out the show. So have a great night. For Matt Nichols, Danny Kelly, we'll catch you next week.